There's lots going on in the world of politics and international politics today. Let's talk to the Shadow Minister for Development, Harriett Baldwin. Good morning to you. Can I start off by talking tariffs? Because from today, we have these 25% tariffs on steel and aluminium going to the United States. The industry saying, well, that's pushing us to the very brink. What should we do?
Yeah, well, as a shadow business minister, I think this is a very serious issue. And what we think the government should do is they should get on the blower and start negotiating again on the free trade agreement. We think they've been rather dragging their feet on this. We welcome the fact that when the Prime Minister met President Trump, they agreed to move forward on a free trade agreement. And I think it is now really important that they do that. It's a terrible thing to be in a trade war like this with tariffs. It's not good for anybody. It's not good for our steel industry. It's not good for consumers in the US. There was substantial progress made on a trade deal during the last Trump administration and when we were in government. And I think it would be incumbent on the current government to really make progress on that and make progress quickly, because it's not good for anyone. It's not good for the world economy to have these tariffs.
What do you make of the Ukraine approving the ceasefire deal, this deal that was brokered with the US? Do you think that Russia will cooperate? And what's it mean for us here? We've got John Healey in Paris today talking about this coalition of the willing, as it's being described. But we still don't have that guarantee of a backstop, do we? And we don't know what's going to happen with lost territory in Ukraine. So still lots of questions there without the answers.
There certainly are, and it's a very, very sensitive time for these international negotiations. Of course, in terms of what the poor people of Ukraine are experiencing, it would be very welcome if Russia were to observe a ceasefire while the negotiations are ongoing. It's absolutely unbearable to see the attacks and the loss of life. So these negotiations are obviously a very sensitive and a very intense stage. But it seems to me that the next stage has got to be that Russia comes to the table and they implement a ceasefire and stop attacking their neighbour in the way that they have been for the last 3 years.
It seems inevitable, though, that if this continues to move forward, Russia is actually going to walk away from this with a good slice of Ukrainian territory. Are you comfortable with that?
I'm not, and I think it's entirely for the Ukrainians to make these decisions as well. So the Ukrainians need to be front and center of these discussions, and that's why it is good news that President Zelensky has been in Saudi Arabia. But clearly, the next step is that Russia has to concede that it is illegally invaded its neighbor, that it's been attacking its neighbor viciously and violently, and they need to withdraw from the Ukrainian territory that they have taken. And there is a negotiation to be had there because, of course, the Ukrainians have moved into the Kursk region.
Can I ask you about the crossbow killer Kyle Clifford? Got 3 whole life sentences yesterday for murdering Louise Hunt, Hannah Hunt and Carol Hunt in their home. He refused to attend his sentencing. He even refused to access the video link to his sentencing as well. And this is a really cowardly trend that we're seeing, aren't we? Lucy Letby refused to attend hers. Axel Rudikabana was not at his sentencing. And Thomas Cashman, who killed Olivia Pratt-Corbell, was also not at his sentencing. Do these criminals need to be compelled to be at their sentencing?
Well, personally, these cases, which are so distressing, I do think that the person convicted should be at their sentencing hearing. Of course, I do think that. And we had proposed making an amendment to the law while we were in our last year of government. Never got to the statute books, but I think there are opportunities for us to bring forward amendments to legislation that the Labour government is bringing in, because, for the families, it's a part of them as the victims of these horrendous, absolutely unimaginably horrendous crimes, being able to at least see someone receiving justice.
OK. Harriett, really good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks for having me.
Someone got in touch earlier on and said, well, wheel them in on a trolley.
Yeah.
Sort of like Hannibal Lecter, if you like. It sounds arcane, doesn't it? But I sort of think, why not?
Well, it's a really important part of the justice process,
Yes,
isn't it? To be there as your sentence is handed down. And it's a surprise that it's not in the law or in the judge's powers to at least compel somebody to be there. Let's head straight to Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury, James Murray. Good morning to you, Mr. Murray. Good to see you. And should we start by talking about Ukraine approving of that ceasefire deal? What are you to make of it?
Well, I think it's a remarkable breakthrough, and it's testament to the work between President Trump and President Zelensky in recent days. And it now really means the ball is in Russia's court. It's for Russia to now respond to the ceasefire proposal, Russia to agree to that deal that's on the table. And we will continue to play our role as an honest broker. So the Prime Minister is looking to convene world leaders this Saturday to continue playing the role the UK has been playing to try and move us towards peace in the war between Ukraine and Russia.
Can we ask you about these tariffs? Because from today, the United States is putting a tariff on our steel and aluminium exports to the US. I thought the Prime Minister was working on stopping this, on having a free trade deal, a carve-out from what Trump was doing to the rest of the world.
Well, it's disappointing that the US has imposed these tariffs. They're global tariffs, so that they affect a whole range of countries, including the UK. We want to continue championing open and free trade, but our response is one of pragmatism, because following the Prime Minister's visit to Washington last month, we've begun rapid negotiations towards an economic agreement, which could involve the elimination of additional tariffs. And so what is in the best interests of UK businesses is for us to respond with a cool head, not a knee-jerk response, but to continue that work negotiating towards an economic deal, because that is the best outcome for British businesses, and that's how we're going to proceed.
What are you doing in the meantime to support British steelworkers? This is an industry that employs 33,000 people, a further 42,000 in the wider supply chain.
Well, you're absolutely right that the position of UK businesses, industry and workers is at the front of our minds. And my colleagues, other ministers, the Secretary of State for Business, are talking to them constantly to make sure we're supporting them. We're backing, for instance, their application to the Trade Remedies Authority to look again at whether further measures are necessary to protect UK producers. But we also know that what is most important for the UK steel industry is for us to avoid an escalating trade war and make sure that we don't have that trade war take place. And that's why we're focused, as I said, on getting this economic deal in place. All options are still on the table. We reserve our right to retaliate. But our position going forward is to engage with a cool head and to get that deal, because we know that deal is what British businesses and the British public most need.
You're a government for growth. So we've been told repeatedly, though it's argued we've yet to see it. To try to boost growth, you're getting rid of the payment systems regulator. Most of us won't know what that is, but it's meant to reduce red tape for businesses. The Conservatives said, you're not abolishing this, it's just being merged with another regulator that it is already a subsidiary of.
Well, what businesses have told us is that they find the regulatory landscape too complex in this space. So you have the payment system regulator. That's one of 3 regulators operating in this space. And so in response to what businesses have told us, that's where the decision comes from, to abolish the payment system regulator, to make sure its functions where necessary are incorporated with the Financial Conduct Authority, but to make it simpler for businesses, because ultimately supporting businesses to take those investment decisions is critical to getting economic growth up. And it's through economic growth that we can put more money in people's pockets.
Can I ask you about the case of Kyle Clifford? 3 whole life sentences handed down to him yesterday for the murders of Louise Hunt, Hannah Hunt and Carol Hunt in their family home. He refused to appear for his sentencing. He refused to even watch it on a video link. And it is this cowardly trend that we're seeing repeatedly now, aren't we? The same with Lucy Letby, shouldn't appear to her sentencing. Axel Rudakabana wasn't at his sentences. The same with Olivia Pratt-Corbell. Do judges need to compel criminals to be present for their sentencing? Does this legislation that we have heard about, does it need to come into force quicker to stop this from happening?
we want new legislation in place. We're going to be publishing a victims bill in the coming months, which will address this very issue, because it's completely unacceptable that criminals are able to avoid being there in person, looking victims' families in the eyes, having that moment there when they have to be physically present. And so what the new law will say is that judges can compel the criminals to come into court. There can be reasonable force used to make sure that happens. If there are specific reasons why a criminal can't physically be in court, then we're looking at other solutions. For instance, having a video screen in their cell, so they have to see the reaction of the victim's family, and they have to be able to see what's happening. As a backstop as well, we're saying that the new legislation will say that if the criminal refuses to appear in court and the other measures don't work, then more time can be added to their sentencing, because we're determined to change the situation, because it's just not acceptable that so many criminals are refusing to appear in court and avoiding that moment of justice.
James Murray, good to see you this morning. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you.